Today I can listen to a Choctaw tale. I can then use my Sharpie to create contour line drawing, which means drawing the outline of things. And then I can use my crayons to add color. As we are learning about the continent of North America, we are going to talk about the Native American people and the African American people that lived in the United States. Our author of our story today is Tim Tingle, and he is a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. He is a popular presenter at storytelling and folklore festivals across the United States. He has been featured in many festivals, and he has won numerous awards for collecting the stories of the Choctaw people. He has authored many books on the Choctaw Native stories, and he lives in Texas with his pet Canadian goose, Bobby G. Our illustrator is Jean Rourke Bridges. She is from Cherokee people. She lives on a hill in eastern Oklahoma, and she actually still lives on the farm and ranch land where she was raised. She runs a business with her husband, James, and it is focused on creating Native American art. She's actually known across the United States and has won many awards in Native American art shows. Her illustrations and paintings were first recognized in this book that we're going to read today called Crossing Bach Chitto. Tim Tingle included this note in his book, and I think it's really important that we read this note before we begin our story. Not only is it going to help you understand the story and the context it was written, but it's also going to explain about the Choctaw people and the way of their storytelling and artwork. Tim Tingle writes this: Set in the Old South, Crossing Bach Chitto is an Indian book written by Indian voices and painted by an Indian artist. The story is documented the Indian way, told and retold, and then passed on by uncles and grandmothers. Crossing Bach Chitto is in this new format of language and painting. This book, the way of telling it, is for both the Indian and non-Indian. We Indians need to continue recounting our past, and from this book, the non-Indians might realize the sweet and secret fire that drives the Indian heart. We are proud of who we are. We are determined that our way shall shared by many of all races, a way of respect for others and land we live on, will prevail. We are people of the earth. Our faith and our stories are down to earth. We are a working people who will never feel comfortable far from the earth. When allowed our plot of earth, we are at our best. We will remain as close as possible to our rivers, for they are intertwined with our faith. We renew our strength. We love clean waters of our rivers. We renew our strength by returning to our rivers. We are baptized in our rivers. We do not deny that darkness exists, but we choose to walk in light. As a people, and for this choice, we are rewarded with miracles in our lives. To stay the darkness, we laugh at our frailties, and to stay the needs of others, we reach out and we give. Our stories tell us that this is the way it's been. This telling of our stories assures us that this is the way it will be. You listen and you tell and you become. As long as our stories are told, we can be Choctaw forever. Blessings to you all, Tim Tingle. Crossing Bach Chitto, a Choctaw tale of freedom and friendship by Tim Tingle, illustrated by Jean Rourke Bridges. There is a river called Bach Chitto that cuts through the Mississippi. In the days before the war between the states, in the days before the Trail of Tears, Bach Chitto was a boundary. On one side of the river lived the Choctaws, a nation of Indian people. On the other side lived the plantation owners and their slaves. If a slave escaped and made his way across Chitto, the slave was free. The slave owner could not follow. That was the law. One Sunday morning, during this time, a Choctaw mama woke her daughter up. "Martha Tom, the sun has been up for 2 hours. Get up and put your dress on, you lazy little girl. I have a wedding to cook for today. Take this basket and fill it with blackberries. Now hurry back." When Martha Tom couldn't find blackberries on the Choctaw side of the river, she did something she'd been told never to do. She went crossing Chitto. The only way to cross Chitto in these days was a stone path just beneath the surface of the river. Only the Choctaws knew it was there, for the Choctaws had built it. When the river flooded, they built the stones up. When the river sank in times of drought, they built the stones down, always just beneath the muddy surface of the water. Martha Tom found a patch of blackberries on the slave side of the river. She filled her basket, then looked to the sky for the sun to lead her home. But it was cloudy and she was lost. Martha Tom thought that she was approaching the river, but instead she was walking still deeper into the woods. She came upon a stump covered with grapevines. Before her lay a clearing filled with logs, rolled out as if they were benches. Martha Tom saw someone coming and dove into the vines. A skinny black man with a cane stepped out of the trees. While Martha Tom watched, he climbed on the stump and called out, "We are bound for the Promised Land." What happened next would change Martha Tom's life forever. Though she saw no one, 100 voices came in reply like a spirit voices whispering, "We are bound for the Promised Land." The old man called out again, "We are bound for the Promised Land." Once again she heard the voices, human voices this time. Closer and closer they came calling, "We are bound for the Promised Land." The old man bowed his head and said, "Oh, who will come and go with me?" 100 slaves replied, stepping from behind the trees and rising up from the bushes where they were hiding. "We will come and go with you. We are bound for the Promised Land." It was the calling together of the Forbidden Slave Church, deep in those Mississippi woods. The old man began to preach, and the people began to sing. Martha Tom had never heard music like this before, but it touched her deeply. Then something else touched her. On the shoulder, she looked up to see the biggest man she had ever seen. His chest so big it was about to pop all the buttons off of his shirt. "You're lost, little girl," he said in a deep voice that seemed to smile. "You're Choctaw from across Chitto?" Martha Tom nodded. "What's your name, little girl?" "Martha Tom." "Well, Martha Tom, I'll get my son to take you back to the river. You can find your way home from there." "Little Mo," he called. A boy appeared. "Little Mo, this girl's lost. She's Choctaw from across Chitto. Take her to the riverbank and she can get home from there." "Daddy, I better not do that," little Mo said. "The men from the plantation house told us that if the children are seen playing near the river, our whole family will get in trouble." His father knelt down to little Mo and said, Son, it's about time you learn. There's no way to move amongst them where they won't even notice you. There's a way to move amongst them where they won't even notice you. It's like you're invisible. You move, not too fast, not too slow. Eyes to the ground, away you go. Now give it a try and get this little girl home." Well, it sounded like a fun game to play. So little Mo took Martha Tom by the hand and off they went, just as little Mo's daddy had taught him. Not too fast, not too slow, eyes to the ground, away you go. They skirted the plantation house and walked right in front of the porch, where the owners were doing their sipping and sighing that Sunday morning. But no one paid them any mind. We must be invisible, thought little Mo. They soon arrived at the river, and it was Tom's turn to lead. She took little Mo to the path, but he couldn't see the stones beneath the muddy water. This'll be a fun game to play, she thought. She walked 5 paces to get a good running start, then leaped to the river. Little Mo reached out to grab her dress as she flew by to try to keep her from drowning. When Martha Tom landed in the river, she stood up. "Little girl, what kind of witch are you?" little Mo cried. Martha Tom laughed. "I'm not any witch. You can do it too. Come on." She took little Mo by the hand, and the two of them went crossing Chitto to the Choctaw side. Even before they stepped from the stones to the earth, little Mo heard the sound of chanting. He thought it must be the heartbeat of the earth itself. It was the old men calling the Choctaws to the wedding ceremony. Martha Tom and little Mo looked down the street of the log homes as the Choctaw women stepped out of every doorway. Their white cotton dresses skimmed the ground, and their shiny black hair fell well below their waist. The women formed a line and began a stomp dance to the beat of the chanting, gliding to a clearing at the end of town. When they reached the clearing, they formed 2 circles, men and women, and the wedding ceremony began. The old men began to sing the old wedding song. It is still sung in Mississippi and Oklahoma just the way they sang it then. Little Mo had never heard music like this before, but it touched him deeply. Then something else touched them both, on the shoulder. It was Martha Tom's mother. Little girl, have you been crossing Chitto? Now, I'm not mad at him, but you must take him back to the river and come right back and give me those blackberries. You are in for it now." Martha Tom knew her mother could cackle like a mad crow on the outside, while on the inside she'd coo like a dove with love for her daughter. She took little Mo to the river and showed him how to cross again on his own. And so began a friendship that would last for years. Every Sunday morning, Martha Tom would cross Chitto on her way to church. She sat with little Mo's family now. She listened to the preaching and sang the songs in English. Then every evening she would sing them in Choctaw as she was crossing Chitto on her way home. Then one day trouble came. It always does in stories or in life. Trouble comes. There was a slave sale, and 20 slaves were sold. They were to leave for New Orleans the very next day before sunrise. The men from the slave households were called together to listen to the names list. Little Mo's mother was on that list. As he walked home, little Mo's father wondered how to tell his family what had happened. He decided to let them have their last meal in peace. When the children stood to clear the table, he motioned for them to be seated. Feeling his knees grow weak, he said, "Children, your mother has been sold." "No!" she cried. The tears seemed to squirt down her cheeks. The children looked at their parents and began to cry. They had never seen their mother and father like this. "This is our last evening together," he said. "Stop your crying. I want every one of you to find something small and precious, something to give to your mother to remember you by, something she can hide, something they can't take away. Now get up and help your mother pack. You will not see her again." No one moved. Then little Mo pulled his father's sleeve and said, "Daddy, there's a way we can stay together. We can go crossing Chitto. Martha Tom told me how. Son, they'll have dogs guarding the river tonight to prevent a crossing. Daddy, we can go just like you taught me. Not too fast, not too slow. Eyes to the ground, away you go. We'll be invisible, Daddy. We have to give it a try." For the first time that day, hope filled the father's heart. "You are right, son. We have to give it a try." He grabbed 7 burlap bags and gave one to each member of the family. He said, "Pack quickly, pack light, and pack for running." But they were not quick enough. The men in the plantation house saw them working late. They called for the guards with the dogs and the lanterns and the guns, and they surrounded the little house. When little Mo's daddy stood with his family around him, he looked out the back door and said, "We could go out that way. It may be darker and it may be safer. But this night's journey is not about darkness and safety. It's about faith. It's about freedom. We will go out the front door." And so they did go out the front door, down to the very last steps, walking just as little Mo reminded them. Not too fast, not too slow, eyes to the ground, away you go. Then something remarkable happened. The family became invisible. They walked into the circle of lanterns, but the light shone right through them. They walked so close to the dogs, but even the dogs didn't know they were there. They were invisible. Soon they stood on the banks of Chitto. Little Mo looked to the clouds covering the moon and said, "Daddy, I've never been here at night. I can't help get us across." His father picked little Mo up and sat him on his hip till their faces almost touched. "Son, the hour is at hand. You know that we call you Little Mo, but that is not your real name. Your name is Moses. Now, Moses, get us across that water." Moses leapt down and ran to the river. He dipped his arms in the chilly waters till he found the stone path. Quick as a bird, he flew across the stones and burst into Martha Tom's house. "I'm sorry, I know it's late," he said, "but we're trying to cross the river. The men are after us, the men with the dogs and the lanterns and the guns. Can you help us?" Martha Tom's mother jumped out of bed and talked as she dressed. "Son, run to your family and hide them in the bushes near the path. Go now, run. You'll know what to come across. Go, I have work to do." She went to every home in the village, pushed open the doors, and called inside, "Women, put on your white dresses and bring a candle and meet me at the river. We're having a ceremony tonight, the crossing kind." And so it came to pass. The guards stood on the slave side of the river with their dogs and lanterns and guns. Suddenly they saw emerging from the white fog on the Choctaw side what looked like to them a band of angels. The angels carried candles that cast a halo glow in the fog around their faces. Rising from the bushes and coming to life in front of them, the guards saw 7 runaway slaves. They lifted their guns to fire. They never shot their guns that night, for stepping out of the band of angels, they saw the most beautiful little angel of all. Her right hand held a candle, her left hand was outstretched, and she was walking on the water. Martha Tom was singing a song she had learned at the slave church, but now she sang it in Choctaw. She finished with the line, "We are bound for the promised land." She took little Mo by the hand. He took his mother, she took the children, they took their father, and all together, all 7 of them, crossed Chitto. When they reached the Choctaw side of the river, they blew the candles out and disappeared into the fog, never to be seen on the slave side again. The descendants of these people still talk about that night. The Choctaws talk about the bravery of that little girl, Martha Tom. The black people talk about the faith of that little boy, Moses. But maybe the white people tell it best. They talk about that night their forefathers witnessed 7 black spirits walking on water to their freedom. I hope you enjoyed that story. I really like that story because of the friendship between the people, and also because it was a true story that happened. We are going to practice contour line drawing today, and contour line drawing is when we draw the outline of something. We're going to be inspired by the artwork in the book at the very end when Little Mo's family crosses with Martha Tom and her family and friends to the side of safety and freedom. So we're going to draw first in the sky the moon, and it was a full bright moon, and we're going to put that in our background. Now, little Mo and his family, if you remember, and Martha Tom and her family lived in forests by the river. So we need to add in some trees. So what we're going to do first is we are going to create these long trees that are a little bit closer to us, and we're just going to create the outline again of the tree. And it doesn't have to quite exactly look like mine. If you remember, trees are organic in nature, meaning they have a natural shape. You just want to draw something that's kind of close to what I'm drawing. So I'm going to do 2 trees here that are about the same size. And again, notice I'm just doing the contour, the outline drawing. And then I'm going to make another tree behind this one, just a little bit smaller and maybe a little bit different with its branches. And notice I want it to start appearing that it's off in the distance, so I didn't draw the bottom all the way down to there. I want to make it look smaller, and then I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. That one I'm getting a little crazy with the tree branches, huh? Okay. And then behind that, I'm going to create just the contour curving line in between my trees. But the contour line of like the forest behind it, except all we're seeing are the treetops in the distance. Now, what we're going to do is along the edge here where our tree is, we're just going to make our river bank and just make a curving contour line, kind of like the letter S of that river. And then here in the middle of the river, we're going to create an outline or contour line again. We're going to do like an upside down U shape with an arm stretched out for Martha Tom in her white dress standing there. And then on the other side, we're going to create an outline of Little Mo. And again, we're just drawing the outline or the contour line of a person. And then we'll finish our river off behind them like this. And that is our simple contour line drawing. We are going to color this in now, and I'm going to keep my colors very simple this week because of the forest and it being at night. So I'm actually going to use a lot of tones that are natural, like black and white and gray and brown, and maybe some darker greens to color mine in. Again, because we are just creating outlines of things, we are not coloring in a lot of detail. We're just showing the contour lines of what happened that moonlit night. Okay, I found my dark color palette that I want to use, that also is very much like the colors we see in nature out in the forest. I'm going to use the blue to full color for my river. I'm going to use regular green for the riverbank and the background of the forest trees. I got this tan color out because I'm going to color my moon that color, I think. And then I've got black to add accents for Martha Tom's hair and for Little Mo's hair. And then I got brown for their hands as well as for some of Little Mo's clothes, and then brown for the trees here. And then I'm going to use the gray, I think, for the sky. So I'm gonna color everything in. I'm gonna speed up the video here, and then we'll meet back when we're all finished. Finished my contour line drawing now about the crossing book Chitto. I really like the way that it turned out. If you notice, I switched some of the colors as I was coloring. I really decided I wanted the moon to look like a silvery moon, so that's why I used gray there, and then black for the night sky. And then the only place I used tan was for Little Mo's shirt. This was a really neat book for me to read. This was the first time Miss Lechner had read this book and story, and also done this art project. I hope you enjoy learning a Choctaw story and also creating contour line drawings today.